All right, good evening, everybody. Glenn McDonald with another Mainline Strength and Conditioning podcast. And tonight I have a good friend of mine, Mike Morton. Me and Mike worked together in Atlanta, or not Atlanta. I'm sorry, not Atlanta, Pollock. Yeah,
Wow.
Pollock. We worked there a couple years together. We are both lieutenants there. Great time working with him. Nothing but respect for Mike. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, again, like he said, Mike Morton. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, from Atlanta, went into the military in 1985. Was stationed over in Germany, field artillery unit. After leaving the military, I went back to Atlanta, kind of in search for a job or what career I wanted to get into. And then Desert Storm kicked off. So I went back in the military, did that year at Desert Storm, and then got out in 1990 and joined the Bureau of Prisons.
Mhm. And you started at Atlanta, right?
Sorry about that.
Yep. You started in Atlanta, right?
So yeah, I started at USP Atlanta, reluctantly, believe it or not. And this is a whole nother story. My father was also in the Bureau,
Right.
and he started in Atlanta in the 70s. So
Oh,
when I got ready to start, he was a unit manager in Ashland, Kentucky, a Woodsec unit manager. And he was pushing me towards the bureau, and I was telling him, I don't want to be a guard, and I wanted to be APD. I wanted to be Atlanta Police.
right.
And when I worked a couple of gigs after getting out of the military, I worked at Loomis Security. Got fired from that because I ran into something in the truck. Not major, but I was honest about it when I told them they fired me.
Wow.
So I'm just still looking. Dad kept asking me, "Hey, I can help you get in." I was not wanting to get in. I definitely didn't want to go to Ashland, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so finally, after striking out everywhere, believe it or not, joined the bureau, and it was a outstanding career. I mean, a really outstanding career after 27 years.
I mean, when I got out of the Marine Corps, it took me a year to really find the bureau and working. I was like unloading tractor trailers. I was cooking in the restaurant. I mean, every bad job you want, I probably did it. And it was just
Yeah,
like, and I ran into a family friend that my mother and father grew up with at a party, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And I was telling him, I was like, "I'm going through hell." He's like, "Hey, I got the perfect job for you, in the Bureau of Prisons." I'm like, "What's that?" So, yeah, it worked out for me too. So it's funny how it happens,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
you just you fall into that job, and then you just kind of like not stuck. You just like, "Hey, this ain't too bad,"
yeah. No,
You
it
make
it turned
really.
out not to be bad at all.
Yep. So how was so 90 you started in Atlanta?
So I started in 1991 at USP Atlanta um, as a correctional officer.
Right.
1992, I joined the SORT team, and the bureau started growing on me a little bit. I kind of felt like, okay, I'm a part of something.
Right.
And we were a tight bond, and the USP was rocking and rolling, as we say. And then I had aspirations of being a lieutenant. So in 1996, I left USP Atlanta and went to FCI Terminal Island in
Mhm.
uh, in California. Did did 2 years there. I was a sort assistant sort leader there, and then when Michael Gassaway left, became the sort leader for that last year that I was there. I was there for 2 years. Left Terminal Island, went to Estill, South Carolina as a sort leader. Spent 2 years there. That put me kind of close to home. I was able to come home and see my grandmother, who was living at the time, and my mom and things like that. Um, Left um, Estill, went to Eglin, Florida, as captain at a prison camp. It was on Eglin Air Force Base. That was probably the roughest assignment I had, believe it or not. I know that
Really?
sounds kind of
Why's that?
weird
Why's that?
because I had came from a USP.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
which was really, strict, and we dealt with real issues. Um, and then went to an FCI at Terminal Island that was rocking and rolling with a lot of gang members and things like that. Estill kind of sized it down just a little bit, but it had some issues also. Then going to a camp, so that was somewhat of a culture shock.
Right, definitely.
Going to that camp. They always said, people that start at PNs and FCIs as rocking and rolling won't do good at a camp. And
Right.
I actually hated it. Not knocking the camp, I just didn't like that we didn't do a lot of uh, inmate
Inmate,
policing. Let's say that.
yeah, a lot of administrative stuff more than anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
back then too. I mean, things were a lot different in the bureau too. Because what was that?
yeah,
Probably 96, 97, somewhere around there.
no, that was 99.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, things were a lot different
Yep.
back then. Yeah.
Yep. So I leave I'm in Eglin and I go to Talladega. I'm at Talladega as the EPO, and that was 2000 to possibly 2001.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get out. I met someone who was working in Victorville at the time, and we were trying to get together. And I was trying to get out to Victorville, doing the right thing, outstanding evaluation, couldn't get out to Victorville. So I ended up taking a bus going to Victorville because the warden would accepted me. And I took a bus going to Victorville to a GS 9.
Oh, from a
Worked
12
my
to
way back up, worked my way back up to an 11 within about 6 months. And Victorville was a pretty decent experience as well. But I wasn't in. I was just a lieutenant at Victorville,
right.
and of course a little bit of SIS, and then to back up at Terminal Island, I was at SIS as well.
Mhm.
So I do my 2 years at Victorville. Actually, it was closer to 3 years at Victorville. Marriage is not going so good. I leave Victorville and I go to Louisiana.
You went back to Atlanta?
No, Pollock,
Oh, Pop.
Louisiana.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, where we were together.
Right. Yep.
Where I used to call you Mac Nasty. I don't know if I should say that on the podcast, but
A lot of
he was
people
known
call me
as
a
Mac
lot of things.
Nasty.
Only for good
So
things.
yeah, he was DCT man. I was a lieutenant there. He was the guy in shoe doing the use of forces. I think you interviewed Captain Cartret,
Oh yeah.
who,
Yeah.
yeah. So Glenn was his favorite, but we had a good crew there at Pollock. I really enjoyed Pollock, believe it or not, and I was kind of kicking and scratching and going to Pollock, but it turned out to be a really, really good duty station.
Oh, did.
So from
Yeah.
Pollock, I get promoted to Brooklyn, New York as the SIA. Backing up at Pollock, I was the SIS for a long period of time as well. And then I was acting SIA at Pollock. And then I got the full-fledged SIA going to Brooklyn, New York. Um, Everybody told me that I was going to be a career killer. And I had never worked in a high rise, which was a whole different dynamic working in a high rise. So I did pretty good at Brooklyn. Those people don't, they wear it on their sleeve, man. Either they like you or they don't. And believe it or not, as a SIA, I got along with them real good, and they kind of union kind of embraced me, and that was a decent tour as well.
Good. Yeah.
I did 2 years at Brooklyn. The warden was Strada. I did him a good job as his SIA. He gets promoted to central office, or I probably wouldn't have ever gotten a central office job. I saw the job on the announcements. I put in for it. I get selected. I go to Washington, D.C. central office in the Office of Emergency Preparedness,
Nice.
where that was really, really a culture shock. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going around to the different institutions, conducting training. I was going to Glencoe. I was over the DCT program and the sniper program and the SORT program as far as the paperwork where the team leaders had to send in their paperwork to central office. I was that guy.
Cool.
So that's pretty much my career in a nutshell. I retired in at the end of 2018. And with those credentials with the Bureau, which, the Bureau getting a bad rap right now, but it really treated me good. And I hear a lot of people saying it treated them good as well. So it's kind of a little shaky right now, but hopefully it'll come back on track.
How long you been retired now?
So I retired in 2018.
Okay.
Yep.
What have you been doing since retirement?
So right just before retirement in central office, I started sending out some resumes and just hope that one of them stick. I retired at 52. I could have went to 57, as you all know, and I was conducting a lot of training, so it was a pretty, as we say, cush job, but I felt like I had done my time, so I deserved a good job at that point. But I went ahead and got out because I felt like I could better leverage my skill set in the private sector and draw that pension, like a lot of people
Right.
think. So what I did was I started sending out resumes, and I kind of thought I wanted to retire in Las Vegas. I was single, and I felt like, okay, Vegas, I'll have a good time. I kind of like to dibble and dabble at the craps table and the blackjack table, and so Vegas was my choice. I sent out a couple of resumes, and the wind called. That's like the most exquisite 5-star hotel in Vegas, the Wynn Resort. So they called and offered me a job as a corporate investigator, and that's just like an SIA in the casino. And it was
Looking
a
at
lot of
staff issues and
lot
stuff.
of I knew I could do investigations, but it was totally different
Right.
type of investigations, to say the least. This is a clean podcast, right, Glenn? Do you have to edit?
I can edit if you need me to, but
No, no, I'm just joking. I'm not going to say anything left. It looked like you got nervous there for a second.
oh no, man. I
No,
cuss all the time. You know that.
no. I'm joking. I'm joking. But the casino business was very interesting for an investigator. And then I met a gentleman who, and in the casino, I drafted some plans for executive protection for their whales or their high roller guys, and as well as their celebrities. So I was escorting this high roller once, and then he offered me a job, and I ended up leaving the Win after a year, and then I got on doing executive protection. Did that for 2 years, along with I got on with the U.S. Marshals as a contract worker,
Mhm.
and that's JPATS. Most people know JPATS. So I was working JPATS as a contract worker. I was also working executive protection for my client, and also building homes in Texas. So I've been really busy
You're busy. That's great, man.
lately, and I just resigned from the Air Marshals. I resigned from the executive protection gig, and I'm just doing the home building in Texas, and then trying to enjoy the retirement a little bit better because you know how we do after we retire. We was chasing that extra money.
Yeah, sometimes you have to, right?
Yep, yep.
How about so going back to Atlanta? What like some of the being a brand new right out of the army and a little bit of time outside the army and then right into corrections. How tough was that for you? I mean, because I know back then Atlanta was pretty crazy back then. So what kind of
Well,
you got any stories about some good times and bad times in there?
yeah, I actually do. Well, remember I said my dad was a correction officer there, and he went up through the ranks. So he was in my ear, in one ear, saying the do's and don'ts. Like, one of the main things you always hear some of the older staff say is, don't take nothing from an inmate. You're gonna get dined out. Eventually, you're gonna get caught. I remember that right out the gate. So I knew I wasn't gonna do anything like that. So
Right.
I had a little heads up on some of the stuff. So when I got there, he still knew a few people there. He knew the warden. He knew the associate warden, and they would kind of keep an eye out. They really never had to really give me any guidance because I stayed on the straight and narrow. And then once I joined SORT back then, we felt like, and I felt like it, and I kind of still feel like it to a certain degree. There's some good staff that's not on SORT, but we felt like the SORT team was the elite.
Right.
So when I got with that group, we all were wearing the blazers and walking around with our chests out and
Yep, yep.
yep. So we just took pride in it. And Atlanta it was no beast. Sort mostly did the use of force. So that was a good side. It was big camaraderie. My first facility working at a pen and camaraderie anyway, in my opinion, is tighter
Oh
because
yeah,
more serious stuff happened.
no doubt. Yep.
So, but on the bad side, some really bad things. I saw a lot of bad things, but I was one of the first responders to D. Antonio Washington's death. He's someone that we celebrate every year at Correctional Workers Week. Most institutions will do a call sign where they call out all the fallen officers. So most people maybe listen to the podcast have probably heard of D. Antonio Washington at some point in their career. And I knew him personally, and it's funny. I just spoke to him leaving. He worked graveyard shift, and I think I worked overtime. But on the way out the door, that penitentiary has a big corridor, and you got to go through the corridor to get in and out. So he was standing, and on the moves, the officers step out in the corridor. So I remember him standing in the corridor, and I remember speaking to him, leaving that evening. Well, coming back to work that next morning is when the incident happened, and it's just it really touched home. Every year when they do correctional workers week, we feel for all of the officers, but that one is a little up close and personal to
Yeah.
me.
Okay. Definitely. Definitely. Yep. Yep. I didn't know you were like one of the first ones there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah,
We never
it
really
was.
talked about it when we were together. Hmm.
No, not really. During correctional workers week, I might talk about it a little bit, but yeah, the inmate's name was Battle. I never forget it.
Hmm. So how long after he was killed did you leave Atlanta?
I left in 2 years. I left in '96. I left in '96, and yeah, going to Terminal Island.
And how'd you like that? I mean, sunny California. I know Terminal Island's a real nice
Man,
area.
believe it or not, you know, I'm sure everybody listening know about cola. So the cola for Terminal Island versus Atlanta, I was just going from a GS8 to a GS9, but it was like 12 grand jump, something crazy like that, you know. And I was like, whoa. But then come to find out, it took every penny for me to get a little two-bedroom
Yeah.
apartment.
Right.
And I don't think I was in the best of areas. I won't say the area, but I was somewhat in the hood. I didn't know I was in the hood, but I was in the hood. And it cost a lot of money to stay in the hood. And but I did it for 2 years. It wasn't horrible. I didn't get robbed or anything, but every time I tell somebody where I live, they were like, "You live there?" But I didn't know.
Yeah, you
I
didn't
just
know
knew not to wear red or blue. That's all I was concerned about.
couldn't afford to go anywhere else either. So you kind
No,
of
and
got
I couldn't afford to go anywhere else. And that's the same with Brooklyn.
right.
Real quick, I'm gonna tell you a Brooklyn story. When I got promoted to Brooklyn as the SIA, the warden, they call you in, they talk to you, welcome you and everything. And he said, you get with the facilities manager. If you want to stay in the staff housing, then he can set you up. I'm like, okay. And I don't want to beat that staff housing up too bad, but I went and it was cool for what they were charging. I remember it was $1,100 a month, and it was with the utilities and everything paid. But the area in Brooklyn where that place was in a nice ritzy area called Bay Ridge. So I rode around the area on the house hunting trip first. And I'm like, whoa, I want one of these. I want one of these. Well, when I looked into it, it was like 3,500, 4 grand a month. And I remember saying, I'm not staying with all the staff as an SIA. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Well, after about 4 days of looking, I came back to that facilities manager. I'm like, you know what? That apartment sounds pretty good. And
Yeah.
actually it turned out to be decent. It wasn't bad at all, like I thought it was going to be. I painted it and I blended in and it worked out. It worked out.
Is that near Battery Park? Is it down that way? I can't because
No,
I've been there
it's
one
by
time.
the Verrazano Bridge
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
where they
I
do the
went there one time. Yeah,
yeah,
those
where they
places
do
aren't too bad.
the marathons and stuff.
Huh? So it's
And then
pretty busy. Yeah.
yeah, and believe it or not, and I'm gonna throw him out. I'm gonna throw him out there. Um, as I said, my dad was in the bureau, and he started to go up the chain, and he ended up retiring in Brooklyn. So when I came to Brooklyn, people knew the name, and they embraced me pretty well. And he was one of the ones that um, gave the okay to end up to buy that building that didn't want to live in.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, he was there at that time, and they, got the blessings through
Mm.
him, and it was Kathy Hawk at the time to buy that building. A lot of staff didn't know that, and I didn't say that, but I'll say it on the podcast.
That's cool. Good
Yep,
information.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Mhm. What about so after that, where'd you go after Terminal Island? You said you went to
I went to
Talladega.
Estill as the sort leader, and
How was it?
easy smeezy joint. A few issues here and there, um, but no issues at Estill. Estill was quite kept secret. And then I was sort leader. At that time, they had some really good sort competitions, and you had the Cohanes and some of those people that was really pushing that sort. So those competitions, they spent a lot of money on them, and
Right.
they were first class, and we used
First
to have
one.
a ball. And they had a traveling trophy for the teams, and they used to have the board out there who was in first place on day two, and you knew you had to take the next event. It was hyped up, and I know those wardens and regional directors was gambling on us
Oh yeah.
because I heard that later in my career that that's what they were doing. But we was going hard for them to try to win those events.
You like speaking of that, do you think I mean, knowing the things you know about the Bureau and what's still going on now is you think they kind of lost that? Like that whole competition, you think that may have affected some things? Because that competitive edge always made a difference, I thought.
Yeah, I do because during those times it was us against them, and when I say us against the inmates, it was us against the inmates, and we trained for it. And when something happened, all the staff pulled together. I don't think it's as tight knit now with that as it was then, and I don't think too many people will disagree with me on that.
True.
We were tighter. It wasn't a race thing or nothing. We were just tight. It was us against them.
Yeah.
Regardless, even if you didn't care for the guy, you had his back in that pen. And that's what I learned right out the gate working at the pen. I wouldn't change that for anything. Working at that USP first, and your hair used to stand up on your back when you were in that unit by yourself with all of those guys, and you didn't know what they did to get in there at that pen as a new boot. Yeah, you got to learn real quick,
Back then
who
we didn't
had your back, and you had to trust that staff member on the other side.
back then we didn't even have Sentry or anything. So like you couldn't like, hey, let me go
Nope,
look at a central file. I mean, you couldn't do anything like that. Now you can just
nope.
pull up whatever you want and
Yep.
see
You could
what
get it
back
from the lieutenant's office and maybe control. That's about it.
that's
But
about it.
they wasn't gonna tell you nothing like
Right,
that.
right,
Tell you to get in there and do some shakedowns. Because
right.
you probably don't remember this, and a lot of people won't remember it. I'll be surprised who will comment and say they do. Atlanta have a rank called OIC nines. Have you ever heard of that?
I heard no, we used to call them super eights.
Super
Kind of like
eights.
a
Okay,
kind of like the same thing where they're like almost like a field training officer type thing. Yep.
exactly. So super eights are just old GS eights.
Yep.
But they literally had OIC nines, and it was only at penitentiaries. So they normally work your high profile positions like rear gate. They didn't No rookies work the rear gate. We called it count clerk at the time, control, main corridor. You was Then it kind of came down to the eights. and then the OIC nines were acting lieutenants a lot.
Mhm.
Well, you had those guys in control, and they didn't play. They were real mean, and they weren't being mean, but if you walk up and say, "Hey, I'm working B unit," and you didn't know the keys, they would kick you out of line and send you to the lieutenant's office to read
Just
your
orders.
post orders.
Damn, man. Holy
They,
crap.
they were hard, man, at the old penitentiaries because you had some old eights there who could run a joint.
Yeah, by
You know what
themselves.
I
Pretty
mean?
much.
And they didn't play with you rookies. They didn't like you anyway. You
Right.
had to prove yourself a little bit.
Yep.
So I joked with a guy about that one day where, those control center officers, you know, rear quarter at the pen in Atlanta called the units to chow and things like that.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep. So yeah, I miss those days. That's why you hear me harping on it so much. But we were tight, man, and that competition on sort was tight. DCT was tight. They were running and almost right with sort teams, most and a lot of your pins.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, you
Yeah.
can't discount them as well.
I remember them days. I used to always try to get them up to that level. I mean, I was never on sort and never claimed to be on sort, but I mean, being EPO and doing all my time on DCT and stuff. I mean, I was always like, hey, you guys got to step it up. I mean, we just can't just go sit around and eat pizza all freaking day. We got to actually, because most likely we're going to be the first ones in there, and
Yeah, yeah.
we
Oh
found
yeah,
that
you
out.
had them boys. You had those boys tight at Pollock.
And we found that out in '95 in the riots in '95. I mean,
Yep.
we're in Danbury. We're in a female joint. And they called us up to Raybrick. Raybrick was like literally on fire. And they call us up. I'm like, what the hell? We're going up there, but I mean, we did really well. I mean, and it was like, wake up time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what really motivated me to like kind of like, hey, you guys got to take this serious. Even if you're just, you know, Joe correctional officer, you got to take that serious. And
Yeah.
really
I
paid
don't
off.
think I don't think they want to get on sort. A lot of staff don't want to get on sort now. They don't want to get on DCT. The morale is just, I don't know what you can do to really change it. The morale is just not there. They're not A lot of staff are not proud of that job. And I know they're getting a bad rap, because I kind of see people's expression when they ask me where I work.
Yeah.
BOP. Oh my God. Wasn't you the ones that did this and did that? But it was once a time where I was proud, man. I don't know if you remember this, Glenn. You remember coming out of Glencoe, they had a windbreaker that had federal officer on the back of it. Everybody had one.
Yep.
Glenn, I wore it in the mall.
In Atlanta?
I wore it, yeah. I was a
You're
new
crazy.
officer,
You're
man. I
crazy.
was I was proud. I used to wear it in the mall. We
I can
used
see the
to,
video.
that's as we used to say back in the day, that's the real police.
Big
Yeah.
old target on your back, man. Walking through
Yep.
Atlanta
It had
with
the
a
big
stop
tar had the
sign.
circle on the back. And I know we're gonna get some chuckles on that one because I know I'm not the only one that did it.
I only wore mine at work, man. That was it.
No, you wore yours at Walmart. Don't play.
Hell no. Hell no.
Yeah, but that's
I
how
was-
proud I was in the
yeah.
'90s. You wouldn't do that now because
Oh, yeah.
now officers got a target on their back for real,
Right. Right. And
and we're
even
not as proud
if
of
you're a
the
correctional
agency as
officer,
we
you know?
once were.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that went back. I mean, I can see that when it started happening. Geez, probably I want to say when I would definitely was in Yazoo, I saw that kind of like happening where people just weren't proud of hey, we had people don't think our people think our job's bullshit. They think it's the bad guy comes in, we put him in a cell, we lock it, throw the key away, and walk away. No,
Hmm.
you're dealing with those suckers all day long.
Yep.
I mean, way too much. I mean, you're dealing with some tough guys, and
Yep.
people just lost that, man. They just don't care. That's what
Yeah.
especially at the end, I saw that. People just don't give it. They don't give a damn about it anymore. They're just like, I'm just here to get checked. That was it. That
Yep.
was it.
Yep.
not taking care of each other, just looking out what's for them. And really, man, we were like eating our own. We were
Yeah,
eating
yeah,
our own all the time.
yep. You're right. You're right. But again, I would, some people say I wouldn't change anything. I would change a couple of things, but for the most part, for the most part, that 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 agency did me good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And and for the record, I never told anybody that my dad was in the bureau. Few people knew, but I never. I know Cartret knew because Cartret worked for him, but I never tried to use it for jobs and things like that. And he used to say, "Man, tell him you know me." I'm like, I wouldn't do that, and it worked out. It
Yeah.
really worked out. And then when people found out, they were like, "What? I never knew
Yeah.
that. I've been knowing Morton for this amount of years or that amount of years. I never knew it." But I wasn't not proud of him. But it just sometimes it can work against you too. People
I mean,
think
you're
you get a
making
promotion for this reason or that reason.
plus you're making your own name for yourself, not
Absolutely,
having.
absolutely,
Oh, definitely.
absolutely.
Now, do you think like where we were talking about like the sort and DCT stuff, do you think that helped you in your career? I mean, obviously, I think it does. I mean, they say on the announcements like, "Oh, this will not help you in promotion or anything like that." But I mean, I see it
Yeah,
where when I was a captain and I saw people who took that time to say, "Hey, I want to be on the team," and it didn't matter what team. Could have been
yeah,
parts sport, planning section team, whatever it was. It didn't matter to me. If they took the time and they're like, "Hey, you know what? I'm kind of motivated and dedicated to the staff and people here," and they're willing to get on a team. I think they stood out more than anybody else.
yeah,
Even if they're a crappy team member, it's like, hey, I mean, you're still there. Still
yeah.
taking the time. Did
Well,
you see that
a
a lot?
lot of teams held each other accountable too.
True.
So I felt like those teams were accountability. Um, they were like accountability checkoffs. You know what I mean? Whereas we slip as humans, but if you got that big brother looking over your shoulder, and they saw you inside the joint slipping, they would take care of you as well. We always talked about setting the standard. Back then when they were giving out a whole bunch of awards, we always walked across the stage. I mean,
Mhm.
we were always getting special acts. Remember that back then they were giving away money,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and we were getting special acts and all kind of stuff. I'm like, what's this for? Just take it. Take that
Yeah.
$300 with you. Now I heard they might give you a time off award
If you get that, yeah, man.
if you
Yeah.
get that, and you won't be able to use it.
I know. I mean, my last eval, I didn't even get a outstanding. They said, "Oh, we didn't
Wow.
have any more QSIs," and I was like, "Okay, I guess
Yeah.
I'm."
So yeah, I would say sort really helped me, and like you as a captain, you saw those guys that was putting forth the extra mile, staying over, doing the use of forces, not leaving when it was time to do a use of force. Yeah, I think those guys should be rewarded. I know we say that we don't look at that, but I absolutely looked at it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of guys that throughout my whole career was just like, "Hey, LT, I'll stay. I got it. You don't even have to pay me. I'm going to stay. We're going to finish this out." Like, oh, hey,
Yep.
right, but I'm going to pay you. Well, you don't have to, but I have to.
Yeah.
Just stuff like
Eh,
that always stood out to me. Always.
Yeah. And then when it's that time, you remember that.
Yeah.
You know what
Oh
I
yeah.
mean? You reward that staff member, man. They'll run through a wall for you if you take care of them.
Yeah. And
But
then you end
in
up.
the
I mean,
same in the same token, management may not take care of them as well as they used to be. And some management, I know that their hands are tied. I know that they don't have the money like they used to have. But it's some things that you can do as management to make people to reward people for going the extra mile, not reward them for doing their job,
mhm,
but for going the extra mile. Now they want to be rewarded for doing their job. You know what I mean? Everybody's an outstanding.
mhm. Yeah,
You
yeah.
sit in the tower for 3 months,
Yeah.
you're an outstanding.
Driving a truck for a whole quarter, and you're like, oh yeah, well, what'd you do? You drove around in circles, man. That's it. I mean, that's
Yep.
you're a great guy and a great gal, but that's all you did. You drove around in
Yeah, it
circles.
bumps it down. Well, if you got an outstanding last quarter, now they feel like they should get an outstanding this quarter.
Mhm. True.
Although they went to the truck that quarter. I never thought it was fair to the person on the compound or that person in control stressing trying to get a bad count clear that they should get the same eval as that other person. That's just me personally talking. Some people might think differently, but I think it is based on the job. When you choose to go to the truck for a quarter, which is nothing wrong with de-stressing, don't think that outstanding is going to go out to the truck with you.
Right.
It's just not fair to that staff member that's grinding inside on that compound.
Yeah, when it's 100 degrees out or whatever. Oh yeah, and
Yeah,
snowing
absolutely,
like crazy.
absolutely. But we need the truck too now.
Oh yeah, definitely need a
Not
truck.
knocking the truck.
No, love the truck guys.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know one thing, like even like when I was a team leader for DCT and stuff, I mean all my like a lot of guys would try to get on my shift. Did you see that a lot? You'd be like
Oh yeah, yeah.
all clicked
And
up and everybody be on the same shift
yep,
or
yep. And that goes back to you taking care of them. They know you're going to take care of them.
and
We
not
used to
just
have,
awards either. You just taking care of people, just
yeah,
hooking them up with extra food or
yep,
early relief, whatever, everything. Yeah.
yep. Glenn, I used to do that all the time, man, at the pen. At Victorville mainly. If I had extra on the shift, when we locked down at 9 o'clock after that count cleared,
Send them home.
and
Yep.
that officer done helped me, last week, the week before, whatever the case is, hey, I kick him out of there.
Yeah.
You know
Yep.
what I mean? Was it right to let him go an hour early? No, not really. But we did it. We had the leeway to do it.
Oh yeah.
Now, yeah, somebody see you doing that, you're gonna get busted as a lieutenant. But you had the leeway to do it. The staff enjoyed it. They enjoy conference calls. They didn't just enjoy you walking around to their post, signing their books, and walking out the door. I used to give training, the
Right.
whole nine, and the staff enjoyed it. Some didn't enjoy it, but at the end of the day, they would tell you, "Man, I didn't know that." And you give a little pop quizzes and cut them out early. Man, that goes a long ways. That goes a long ways when you really need that staff member to stay over because you got a use of force and shoe, which I used to have in Victorville all the time at the pen. I would have a GS8 running the whole joint because I'm stuck down in shoe dealing with a guy with his arm out the food slot. Because you
Right.
can't just open the door and go smash him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, man, I had some strong GS8s at that pen in Victorville. That I had to lean on because I wasn't even out there to run mainline or anything. I'm dealing with the knucklehead in shoe.
I
So
mean, back in the early days, I mean, a lot of times when you're probably a GS7, GS8, and I mean, the lieutenants you wouldn't even see them.
yeah,
They'd just be in the
yeah,
office doing what they had to do, and the eights would be taking care of business,
yeah,
running everything.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It was that part's difficult too because you don't want to dump on that really good GS8.
Oh,
You
yeah.
so I also would try to bring some of those other staff members up. If I saw a little something in them and it looked like they had a little potential, you start giving them some responsibility. They'll appreciate it.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of them, some of
Right.
them will appreciate it, and it's a teaching mechanism. But I don't know if that's being done to that degree nowadays. A lot of times, from what I hear, a lot of supervisors they're going to do their 18 months and they're moving on to the next facility. Nobody's trying to train nobody up, and I don't know. I won't say those days are over because I'm not there, but those days are probably over.
I'm sure there's a few here and there. We probably
Yeah,
might
you
know
you
a
got
few of
some.
them. So,
You probably got some lieutenants or some staff that's sprinkled around doing it, but it's not the majority anymore, in my opinion.
I mean, the guys I still talk to now, most of them are lieutenants, and and they came up through the ranks when I was a lieutenant, and they're like, yeah, it's not like that anymore. And just saying like how they remember how I used to do this and that, and they're trying to do the same thing, but they just keep getting cut down to
Yeah,
not do
yeah.
anything. Things like that. It's
And
kind of
if they
crazy.
don't have the support, they'll get killed off.
Oh yeah, easy.
Yeah, they'll get fouled on, and then their attitude will change, and they'll say, "Screw it, you know what? I'm not going to
Kick
try to
back.
enforce this. I know I'm not going to get supported." So
Right.
that's a problem too. And then as you go up higher, they really their hands, wardens' hands are tied too.
Mhm.
The RD is running the joint.
Right. Yeah, I
You know what
know.
I
A
mean?
lot of people
The
don't
RD
realize it.
is running the joint, and I'm sure
Really
a
don't
lot of
realize
people will agree to that. I mean, the RDs actually run the joint. I went to a facility, and I won't call no names. And the warden, I was doing an emergency preparedness assessment. Myself and Pat Love. Some people know who he is. And towards the end, the warden had us in his office, and he says, "So, Morton, when you gonna go out as an AW?" I said, "Man, I don't know. I'm here in the room." He said, "Well, let me stop you. Stay right there in central office. Don't come out to the field. You will be an idiot."
it. Mhm.
This is a warden talking.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? And the warden wasn't he wasn't in any trouble. They wasn't getting ready to make him retire. He's telling me they don't have any authority anymore.
Mm.
And you're going to be so frustrated and so stressed out. Stay in central office. He said, "You like training and traveling and all that? Stay there. Don't come out here to this mess." And not
Right.
only one warden, a couple of wardens told me that. Now that's from a warden, and that hit home when he said that. He didn't have anything to gain by telling me that.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Yep.
He said, "Man, it's not worth it. Don't come out here to you in a perfect position to help and try to make the agency better. Stay where you are. Don't come out here to this." I was like, wow.
Mm. Yeah. I
Yeah, I never
seen
forgot that.
seen that my last couple years at Chicago, man. I was just like, the region would call in and be like, "Oh, you guys need to do this and that." It's like, um, hey, I thought we run this place. Even for me, for as a captain, the correctional service administrator. Matter of fact, when COVID broke out, right, and this brand new correctional service administrator shows up in the region, we're probably like probably maybe a week or two into the whole COVID craziness. And I don't. Were you around then, or were
Yeah,
you? Right, but you were.
I was on the way out though. I was on the
Yeah.
way out.
So in the field, man, it was just a freaking mess. It was a mess. And this guy calls me out of the blue, basically saying, "Hey, what the hell are you doing down there? Because you're not doing it right." And I'm like, "Oh, Mike, that was not a good day." I think his ears probably hurt. I think his ears hurt for a little while after that, after that conversation. And of course, I got called down to the boss's office. Hey, you can't talk to them like that. Well, boss, if you called me and you said the same thing to me, guess what? We'd be having the exact same conversation. Because
So
if you're gonna sit,
they saw the nasty,
yeah, oh, double nasty.
double nasty. That's funny.
Oh yeah,
That's
man.
funny.
Oh yeah, tough
Yeah,
time.
so it's difficult for officers now, a new officer coming in, if they don't get with the right crowd, because they're gonna click up just like inmates do.
Yep.
If they don't get with that right group, they're tainted right out the gate,
Oh yeah.
right out of Glencoe, right out of Glencoe. They're
Yeah,
telling the
hell, right out of
lieutenants what
IF.
they're gonna
Right
do and what they're not
out of
gonna do.
IF. Right out
Right
of
out of
IF.
IF, yeah,
Yeah, we had rookies coming in saying, "No, I'm not. I can't work. I can't work Fridays." Like, dude, yeah, you can. Watch, you're gonna be working. You know, I mean,
yeah,
just crazy stuff. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Man, I was telling somebody a couple of months ago, we didn't even walk up to wardens in the 90s.
No.
And I'll throw the name out there. We had Willie Scott and a guy by the name of Fred Stock. Now,
Hmm.
Fred Stock is old school.
Right.
And then most people know Willie Stock. And then we had Bob Matthews. This was in Atlanta. As an officer, I never went up to the warden and complained about anything. We were scared to talk to him. Not scared to talk to him, but we didn't come up to him. We respected the lieutenants so much because they were all older dudes.
Yeah.
And we respected them so much, everything went through the lieutenant or that senior GS8.
Mhm.
That's not happening. You got the guy right out of IF
All right.
walking up
So
to the warden that main line right now saying what they don't like, what Glenn McDonald did to him.
that might have happened a few times.
Yep. And you will be on the carpet.
Oh, in a heartbeat, over the radio. Hey, you need to
Yep.
report over to the office. Like, oh
Yep.
shit.
Yep. Yep. So that's where we're falling off the tracks, man. Until they can really tighten all that up and give some authority back to those lieutenants first, and the captains and the associate wardens and the wardens. They're running with their tail between their legs. They're scared to death. They can't make a decision. That
Mhm.
ain't happening.
You
That ain't
think
happening. They
think
they
that's
they gonna
just
make that call before they make that decision.
think it's just a leadership thing, or it's just like a fear of reprisal by the region or getting their ass chewed by the region for making this a decision?
I think all of the above. I
Yeah,
mean, they're just passing through most of them. Most of them are getting promoted way earlier than
they should.
their skill set is allowing them to be able to handle. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I would say some of them are doing the best they can, but they're scared. They're scared because they know if they make a bad decision, that's it. They're not. They're pumping the brakes right there. But
yeah,
when we were coming through, they said, "Look, right or wrong, make a decision."
yep.
Now,
And stick with it.
unless you were
Yeah,
way left field with your decision, you was getting supported. And you might get pulled in and say, hey, next time I would handle this or like that. But you wasn't getting crucified.
right.
So the supervisors got it tough right now, man. I wouldn't want to be a lieutenant, AW, a warden for any amount of money.
Or captain.
Or
Good
definitely not a captain.
man, Jesus. I
You could
mean,
be at the house and somebody make a decision and you're done.
yep. Oh, that I came close a couple times on that.
Yeah,
And
with the policies in place. Policies are in place. The captain has put the policies in place. Captain's at home with his family. Somebody make a bad decision, captain's the first one to go.
yep. Mm-hmm.
So that's why people can't make a decision now because they know they're gonna get it if it's a bad decision. And I've always felt like it may not be the decision that I would have made, but it wasn't catastrophic
Mm-hmm.
to the degree where we lost inmates. Several inmates escaped. If it's not way left, use it as a training moment
Uh-huh.
and not a moment to crucify the person that made the decision that you wouldn't have made, or maybe that goes with experience. So everybody hadn't worked 5 or 6 joints. Some people has only worked one joint, so they're
Yeah,
not going to make the perfect decision because they haven't lived that situation.
What else? So after that, you went to Victorville, or you went to captain at the camp, right?
Well, yeah, I went to captain at the camp. That was a lot of going to a lot of ceremonies. Whatever the warden didn't want to go to, the captain went to. So we went to a lot of ceremonies at Eglin, and most of your camps that's on a base. Your inmates are responsible for cleaning up the base.
Right.
So civilians came and picked up the inmates in the morning, and then they were dropped off at different locations throughout the base, and they worked and they cleaned up the base, and then they met at a certain time for lunch, came back on the bus, went to lunch, got back on the bus, went back out to their work site. Some of them had a pass to stay out and eat, but they had to be back at a certain time. Once they came back, we would conduct a count.
Yeah.
and that's how the camp worked. That was somewhat of a culture shock because we had inmates with. I'm sure some people have heard of Hooch and Pruno. When I got to the West Coast, it was Pruno. East Coast was Hooch. Well, at the camp at Eglin, they had Hennessy.
Oh hell yeah, they had the good
Yeah,
stuff.
they had real stuff. So you wasn't finding no milk bladders with hooch in them. You were
Oh no.
finding bottles of Hennessy or water bottles with Hennessy in them and stuff like that. So that was a different dynamic that I had never experienced before.
Yeah.
So, but it was nothing tough about it. It's just homegrown joint. They don't want anything new. They know you're just coming through to get your feet wet as a captain. But I ended up not going that route. I went the EPO route, and I'm glad I did actually.
How'd you roll into that? How'd you get involved in that then?
Um,
Real world.
Bob, I really wanted to get closer to home. I was trying to go home on the weekends and stuff like that, and you know how difficult that can be as a captain, being
Yeah.
out of pocket on the weekends. Although there was nothing going on at the camp. So finally, Robert Matthews, who was the regional director at the time, allowed me to go to Talladega, and that's when I got the EPO job at Talladega.
That was that a 12 back then?
No, it wasn't a 12; it was 11.
11? Okay.
Yeah, but the captain at Eglin was an 11 as well.
Right. Right.
So
Yep.
I think I lateral as an 11 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that, but circumstances caused it to happen like that.
What you gotta do, brother.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
So how'd you like the EPO world? I know I
I
loved it.
enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it, man. I enjoyed it. As EPO, you host all you put together all the mock exercises for the facility. You assign all the role players, give them their acting job, just like, they did at Glencoe with the role players, but you have them throughout the institution. Staff enjoy it. Some of them don't enjoy it, but some of them enjoy it. That's playing the part of some of the role players, whether it be inmate or staff or active shooter. So I enjoyed drafting those. I had about 5 solid ones, and I would tweak it for each facility that I was going to. And then every now and then I would draft a new one because they would start to get out
Figure.
to other facilities as to what you were going to do. So I would put a little twist in all of them, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed doing the fire exercise when we really brought a real fire truck in. We
Mhm.
really operated the rear gate manually to make sure that was one of the tests, to operate the rear gate manually to see if the fire truck can get in. We went to one facility, and the way the gate was made, the fire truck couldn't get in the gate.
Couldn't fit, huh?
They
Yeah.
never knew that. They wouldn't have known it if we didn't do the mock exercise.
Mhm.
And as the fire truck pulled up, so that means that facility hadn't done a fire exercise, not a real one. They might have emptied all the inmates out on the yard, but they didn't bring a fire truck in. And that's what those emergency preparedness assessments were. So at Talladega, I was the EPO for that facility. So DCT files, I did all of those along with the DCT leader. Sort files, I just kept all that stuff in order and did the mock exercise, gave annual training for the emergency preparedness side of the house. So that was a good job. That was a good gig. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I really yeah, I mean I give that to Cartret too, getting me that job. And I mean I loved it, man. It was great. I loved it. Every second of it. I was like, damn, this is how it's supposed to be. I was like, shit, I can
Yep.
handle this. Yeah.
Yep. Shout out to Cartret. In my opinion, this is my opinion, he was probably the best captain I ever had.
Oh yeah. Hands
And
down.
I had some years in the bureau when I hooked up with Cartret the second time.
Mhm.
I knew him in Atlanta too, but I hooked up with him a second time and really got to see that skill set. And he was very articulate, you know, didn't play no games, but he also took care of his lieutenants, and he was, you'll run through a wall for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like that is like that father figure that you needed as a captain, and just take care of you, no
yeah,
matter what.
yeah,
You saw that. I mean, you saw some of the lieutenants we had, and I mean, as bad as they were, he was like, "Hey, come on in here. We're gonna talk. You know, I might
Yeah,
have to spank you a little bit, but we're gonna fix this. You know, you
yeah,
might be grounded for a little while, but we're gonna
yeah,
fix it."
yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
he
he's
knew
good, good
who he
shit.
could lean on, but he pretty much had a good core of lieutenants.
Yeah, he did.
I
Mhm.
still got that picture when we all took a picture in the front lobby.
Yeah, I got it too. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, I enjoyed Pollock way more than I thought I would.
Yeah, it's funny how, and I just interviewed I don't know if you remember Scott Myrick.
I remember the name.
He was at Pollock, and we were talking about the same thing, man. How like it's so weird. Like you really miss, for some reason you really miss that place. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Everywhere I went, they said, the 9 institutions I worked at, they're like, "Well, what's your favorite place?" I'm like, "Geez, I gotta say Pollock." And they're like, "Well, wasn't Pollock really bad?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was really bad. When it's bad, it's really bad, But I mean, for the most part, I mean, I loved it, man. Going to work is just
yeah,
like you felt good going to work, even though you be working a hell of a lot of hours, but it was good shit.
yeah, yeah. We had a good administration, man. I enjoyed it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Now, when you went to let's talk about Brooklyn. How bad was that? Was that? I mean, I know high rise. I know when I worked in Chicago, it was like, wow, this is a totally different animal. Being in the high rise and just the way that everything was set up, and
Yeah,
just, I mean, not even. I mean, the staff were great, but it's just like a different mentality, I think, and
yeah,
like a big city type thing,
yeah.
compared to like,
New Yorkers are different, man.
oh yeah,
New
yeah,
Yorkers, they're different. And I was a little worried because they gonna tell you how they feel right then and there.
right,
And to add to it, I was the SIA. So, I came in like, okay, here we go. I'm putting on the boxing gloves because I know I'm getting ready to box some of these dudes and girls because they didn't play either.
right.
But believe it or not, man, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. I got along with the union, a few little hiccups here and there, but nothing major that made the papers. No union is going to get along with the SIA totally,
Mhm.
but for the most part, we got along pretty good. And at my going away, I had a lot of union people there.
Mm.
So, but Brooklyn in itself, other than it being, is super cold. I do not like cold. And New York is so crowded, man. It was so crowded. People used to park in the middle of the street and go inside of a store and get a bagel in the morning. Nobody can get by them
Just
in
to
the
give,
middle of the street. And when they come out, you better not say nothing or they're gonna cuss you out because they were all mean in the morning. But no, I'm joking. But New York was, other than it being cold, it was not as bad as I thought. Not as bad as I thought. I wasn't hunting anybody for the most part. I had the average cases like any other SIA, and for the most part, you can't you can't do a summary until they actually go to court if it was a court issue. And I had the regular stuff that any other institution would have, you know, as an SIA. But it wasn't a bad gig, other than you lived next door to all your staff.
right, right.
That was a little weird, but since I got along with them, it wasn't weird. You see them in the hallway and you chop it up with them. And then I was from Atlanta. Hold on, let me show you. Hold on, right quick. You see that?
Is that a dead bird? Oh,
Yeah, them dirty birds.
is that a crow or
So
something?
they used to give it to me because I was giving it to them on those sorry Giants and the Jets.
Yeah.
So that's what I would, and if you can give it, you got to be able to take it from the New Yorkers, man. They used to give it to me hard about those Falcons, man. So yeah, I enjoyed New York, but 2 years was enough because it was so cold. And then going to DC, from New York.
Mhm. Did you see a lot of was there like a lot of bleed over from like Manhattan over to Brooklyn, or did you have to get involved in anything over there?
No, the only one time I got involved with a Manhattan case was the SIA over there. Um, her daughter was babysitting the lady that had a case.
Mhm.
So that was a conflict. That was a conflict. So they did the right thing. They called me over. I did that case, and it was something else that was a conflict. And being an SIA and you were there as an officer, you're gonna befriend a lot of the staff members that you may end up doing a case on.
Right.
So that's what the case was. It was a few people that they were close to that they wouldn't have been impartial. So therefore I came over and did it. But other than that, they're two separate entities. They pretty much do most of the court cases, things like that, way more than Brooklyn. Brooklyn did some as well. But yeah, that's the only dealings I had with Manhattan.
You have a pretty big shop over there or what?
No, no, it wasn't big. It was you did have two SIAs, believe it or not. It was myself, the other SIA, one, two, three, four. I had six techs. Two of them, most people that know Brooklyn, is two buildings. I had two assigned to the other building just for easy access. They could have worked out of our office, but we didn't have enough room. So
Yeah.
two were over in another SIS office in the other building, which was a little limited and kind of small. And then the rest of them were in the main building. So it wasn't that many. I think I had six plus three lieutenants,
Okay.
two lieutenants and two SIAs.
Well, it's pretty
So
good shop.
so
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty big compared to the average joint.
Yeah. Right. I mean, you guys had what do you have like 15 or 1800 inmates somewhere on there, I believe.
Yep,
Between
yep,
both buildings somewhere on there.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was a little less. I think it was more like 15.
Then
Yeah,
after
you
that
had
was
some.
central office, right?
After that was central office. Yep, yep.
So
So in central office, we worked out of a command center, and it was a big room with a horseshoe table with a whole bunch of TVs. And if you walk right out of the command center, then all the officers were outside of the command center, but still secure behind a door that you needed a keypad or ID for. So when you first walked in, you had the common area with all the offices, and then you stepped onto the back and you had the command center. So doing any type of emergency, whether it be the hurricane, all of the information from the institutions affected came through central office. And we were pretty much just logistics, making sure that the JPAX plane was coming, and then they had buses coming, and all we're doing in emergency preparedness is coordinating for that facility or that region. So if it was a regional thing, like say the hurricane hit Miami, they would in turn call their region. The facility would call their region, give all the information, and then region command center, which was man 24/7, they would in turn call the central office and give that same information so that we can compile a plan for the next day. And so we're not, that worked really, really smooth. I learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot, but I learned more being in the in that main hub with all the facilities reaching out to you. Because if it's a whole region, you got several institutions that's calling you with their timeline of anything that happened of importance. So I really enjoyed that. And then one of the hurricanes, myself and Pat Love deployed down to the Tampa area where we met up with several other law enforcement entities and assisted that way. And we were on the Cherokee Indian base, and we relieved the Cherokee Police Department, or Seminole, I'm sorry, Seminole Police Department, while they went home and helped them, stay with their families and did things like that. So we really enjoyed that, and that's that was one of the highlights of working in central office, is being deployed and really helping some people that really, really need help. And like I said, we were assigned to an Indian reservation, and they were really, really respectful. They were really high on their elderly, and we had to check on the elderly. I worked the graveyard shift. Pat worked 12 hours doing a day shift in the command center truck, and they put us in a squad car, and we just checked on the elderly and reported back to central office because we were having to do the same thing, report back to central offices where our whereabouts were. And all the command center vehicles were down in one location, and everybody was coordinating, marshals, ATF, FBI, and it was a sight to see. And we would have meetings throughout the day through conference call and group meetings. It was something else.
Did did you notice, like, when you went into those group meetings, did people like, what the hell are you guys doing here? Like the Bureau of Prisons, where
No,
anybody?
you know what, Glenn? Believe it or not, before we were deployed, I would get on a conference call with FEMA, FBI, all the federal agencies. They leaned on the Bureau the most because we had the most staff.
Right.
We also had bunk trucks, which they thought was brilliant. A lot of
Shower.
people don't even know what a bunk truck is, but it's an 18 wheeler that's got bunks in it and a shower in it. Well, the Bureau had them staged throughout the United States. And that was something else that we were coordinating because those bunk trucks was en route to Florida, and we would have to give an update as to where they were, the staff members. You had to make sure the staff members had hotel accommodations. So all we did was coordinate it. And once everybody got close to being in place, then they wanted some staff from central office to come, and myself and Pat drove the command center truck down. But the Bureau, doing these conference calls every day, the Bureau was like the most sought after agency because we got the biggest staff. Every time they needed something and they were talking, FEMA were talking, it was like, yeah, the Bureau can handle that. We have this, we have that. The chief OEP was doing the talking or the correction service administrator up there. Yeah, we have this, we have that. Let us get back to you. Let's see how many we have on hand. We already knew because we keep track of everything we got on hand as far as tents, bunk trucks, porta potties, whatever. That's it stationed in the Texas area, central, South Central area.
It's all in the
So
EPLS every time too. So you guys had it
that's
on hand.
true. That's true.
Yeah. Did
I think they love the Bureau. They ended up taking two DCT teams over to Puerto Rico.
oh, during one of the hurricanes?
Yeah, during the hurricanes, because after that first hurricane, where they found out all the resources we had, the Bureau became the first agency that they really could rely on for staff. And because we didn't want to deplete facilities, so we were bringing staff from the West Coast to sort from the West Coast to help with that because we couldn't deplete, Miami's whole sort team or
Call
the Southeast institutions. We couldn't deplete them like that, so we had to get resources from the West Coast, and they were very, very pleased with that situation.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, even when like what was it, 2020, like the riots in DC and all over the place, and it was funny seeing the BOP guys all lined up in DC, and I was like,
Yep.
what the hell are these guys doing down there? I was like, hey man, you guys don't know what you're messing with right there, man. You might not want to mess with them guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's when the Bureau come together when we got an emergency. We just can't. Just hard for us to come together when nothing's going on. That's when we fight each other.
It's when we make trouble for each other.
Yep. Yep. But again, I wouldn't trade it. I had a good career. I enjoyed it. The BOP was good to me. I don't have
Sir,
nothing bad to say about it as far as that. Does it need some corrections now? Absolutely, but it was good to me coming up.
yeah, yeah. And it's what you make of it too. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, you had a good career. I had a good career. I mean, I, every time, I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and, you know, I, every time, every time I went somewhere, I did my best, and I just did my work, you know, and that at the end helped out. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
being a pain to everybody, I just did what I had to do.
yeah, yeah. Well, it was good, and I don't stay in touch with a lot of people, but you and I always stayed in touch, man, and I enjoyed working with you. You was the Mac Nasty. Now, some people on your podcast like, why you keep calling you Mac Nasty? But that's the nickname that I gave him because the dude didn't play no games. Had the little straight face, but I used to make you crack a smile. But you was serious all the time.
Hey, man, you got to take care of business, man. You got to
Yeah,
take care of
yeah,
people.
yeah. Mac didn't play.
We're in a dangerous place. We had to take care of
Yeah,
business.
yeah. And I'm very thankful that we came out because that could have ended up a different way, man. We really, a lot of us should be thankful because we're working around hundreds and hundreds of guys, and it doesn't take but one of them to go left on you, and you could be maimed or killed.
Some close calls there, man. We had some tough nights. I remember me and you having some tough nights.
Yep, yep,
You'd stay
yep. But
late.
nothing life threatening. I've been punched, spit on, but that was about it. I never been stabbed or anything like that. So
Came
I'm
close a few
grateful.
times. Yeah, nothing serious. No.
Yeah, I'm grateful.
Well, I think we had, the people we had around us, the people we trained, I think, that helped us out. Definitely.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think people need to understand that now. If you're in the field right now, you gotta build that relationship with your troops and you gotta take care of them. And they're gonna take care of you no matter
yeah,
what.
yeah. I still think they do that though. I mean, if it's a staff member getting attacked or
Oh yeah, I'm
or
sure.
anything like that, the staff
Yeah.
they come together.
Right. Right.
It's just afterwards they may not be together, but when there was an issue, I really never had a staff member go the other way.
No, no.
Now you had some that would dive over five or six guys because they were just on it, but I never really had a staff member go the other way that I saw. So but yeah.
So let's close it out here. And any last minute advice for anybody listening? Anybody brand new in the bureau? I mean, somebody with what do you have, 27 years?
Yep. Yep.
I had 28. So yeah. So what any last minute advice?
Um, I would say anybody coming in the bureau, try to, we all got common sense. Try to lock up with somebody that's doing the right thing. And most people know who's doing the right thing and who's not. And it's up to you to go with the person doing the right thing. They may not be the most popular sometimes because they're doing the right thing, but if you can link up with somebody that's teaching and you see them doing the right thing, they look sharp. Because believe it or not, I used to tell staff all the time in IF, inmates size you up. If you look like a rag bag, they're going to try you more so than that guy that's sharp. And they both may know the same thing, but you'll get tried a little bit quicker than that person that's sharp. That doesn't mean the person that's sharp is real knowledgeable, but that's a start.
Mhm.
Is to look sharp, carry yourself well, link up with some of the right people, and try to learn. Walk in the door, try to learn, be humble, work, you know, work the jobs that's not the most desired, and eventually you'll get rewarded. You'll get rewarded. And what's gonna sometimes I hear these stories about some of the guys some of the ladies and guys that's trying to do the right thing, but they see the other people that's not doing the right thing get rewarded or nothing happened to them. So why should I do this? This taking me 30 minutes longer to do it the right way when they've been doing it like this and nobody says anything. Well, eventually that shortcut's going to catch up with that person. So do it the right way, regardless of what it is. If it's issue, do not cut corners. And that's all I would tell them. Try to link up, and that's the easiest part is to try to link up with somebody that's doing the right thing. Most staff that's doing the right thing will teach you. They want to show you the right way. But oftentimes if they link up with the wrong person out the gate, um, then they normally will start to go left.
True.
And if you don't catch them quick, once they go left,
Yeah.
they'll be left.
And and they can bounce back too. They can.
Yeah, they can bounce back. They can bounce back, but it takes them to do it. It's good for. And we used to have a mentoring ship program where you had like 5 staff members under you that just came in the door, and they gave those to people that they felt were up and coming, good lieutenant or something like that. And you grabbed 5 of the staff and you mentored them. And you're supposed to check on them, once a quarter and things like that. And they're supposed to report to you. And if they start to go left, you can snatch them back. I don't know if that's something that they're doing, and they're not doing it, they should start. And if they're just barely doing it, that could be something that could really, really be beneficial to some of the new staff walking in the gate. That mentoring program and really hold it. And a person got to want to be a mentor to do it. But there's
Oh,
some people out there that want to do it.
oh
So
yeah, definitely.
I think that's a good start also.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, hey man, as usual, it's always good to see you. And
Yeah, you too,
I
man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
don't know if you forgot your nickname, right? Did you?
No, I didn't have a nickname. I don't know what you're talking about.
Magic Mike. I remember. I remember it very
No,
well.
no, no Magic Mike. That's a stripper's name, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not me,
Okay.
brother.
All right, man. Hey, it was good
All
seeing
right,
you.
Glenn.
Hey,
Appreciate you having me, man.
appreciate it, man.
Always good to
Yeah,
talk to you, brother.
man. Good talking to you.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
All
Later.
right.